now move on to our keynote presentation on the role of diversity and inclusion in 2022 and how do we supercharge the change to create more inclusive cultures. I'm pleased to introduce Alex Evreinoff from Evolve. Alexandra is managing director and has worked at Evolve for almost 9 years and has been integral to the development and success of the business as a D&I consultancy and network working across intersectional inclusion. As the first person to join Evolve's CEO, Suki Sandhu, in creating and growing the outstanding LGBT+ network back in 2013, she was responsible for engaging and nurturing an amazing range of clients that Evolve still works with today and advising them in the implementation of inclusive practices. This experience of driving inclusive cultures with global clients has helped position Alex as an expert in all things related to DE&I and allowed her to shape Evolve's growing portfolio of inclusion initiatives. Alex is half Spanish, half French, and grew up between Brazil, Spain, and France, with a stint in the US, so always looks at diversity through an international lens. Thanks, Alex, and Evolve for being part of our OneWISH event today. I now hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I will just start sharing my screen just a second. And hopefully, Melissa, can you please let me know if, oh?
It's saying you've started screen sharing, but nothing's come up yet. Good, thank you.
Which slide are you on? Sorry.
The big picture. What is
the big picture? Amazing. Yes. I do apologize for that small tech issue. So very happy to be here with you today to discuss the role of D&I in 2022 and how I'll be sharing some ideas to supercharge change to create and enhance more inclusive cultures. So in terms of Evolve, we're a global network and we champion equity, diversity, inclusion in business. And we've been doing this since 2013. We do this on a global level and we work with our clients on awareness workshops, campaigns, talent development programs for diverse talent, thought leadership, as well as advisory solutions, where we really take the opportunity to know our clients in depth and really tailor our solutions so that they complement their strategies and really help them achieve their objectives. We also publish annual role model lists that are supported by our partner, Yahoo Finance. And these role model lists really are an opportunity for us to highlight and celebrate business leaders who not only are very successful in their own careers, but are actually incredibly active in actually driving inclusion and equity in the workplace. So for us, these inspirational stories need to be shared on a global scale and will truly help with the representation, we believe, in terms of representation of diversity at senior leadership level. So our lists are called Heroes. Heroes are actually future women who champion women in business and their allies, as well as Empower, that champion ethnically diverse leaders, and Outstanding, that champion LGBT+ leaders. So if you want more information, please do check out our website. We're currently actually accepting nominations for our Empower list. So in terms of the actual conversation around diversity and inclusion and why it should still be top of the agenda in 2022. Well, even though there has been progress, things still need to actually change for representation of diversity at senior levels. So as we can see here, like 8.1% of Fortune 500 CEOs are actually women, and only 1% are women of color. Now you can look at any really index in the Western world, and you'll have similar stats. Now, these indices are incredibly homogeneous, And what we're trying to do here is actually break that glass ceiling for diverse talent. So when we look at diversity, we shouldn't only focus on one strand, but actually look at it with this intersectional lens, because representation really does matter. People who can see themselves reflected at senior leadership levels will actually believe that they can make it themselves as well. So even though there has been progress, and especially for women nowadays, where 40% of board positions at the UK's biggest companies are held by women, yes, it's progress and it's something to celebrate. But despite that progress, women are still hugely underrepresented in senior executive positions. So this means that we are continuing to assign women in lower in power jobs, or less direct to actually CEO talent pipelines, which actually most men will have access to at a FTSE 100 and 350 firms. So when we consider that intersectionality as well, with the added challenge of raising the career profile of women from groups that continue to be underrepresented at the workplace, such as Black women or women from the LGBTQ+ communities, women with visible or invisible disabilities, and other women from protected characteristics, they continue to be missing at the board and executive level. So it's incredibly important that, yes, we celebrate the progress, but still recognize that there's much progress to be made. There are currently just 4 publicly out, actually LGBT plus CEOs as well on Fortune 500 companies, and 0 on the FTSE 100. And this actually has decreased from 2018 when we had 2 openly LGBT plus CEOs, apologies. So in case we still need to highlight the business case, well, this is one stat. We can share so many other stats that the studies from McKinsey or Deloitte keep actually just enhancing and highlighting the need for diversity in business and how good it is, not only for companies to become more profitable, productive, and really to offer greater innovation. So really, we should turn it around and ask, what is the business case for not actually driving inclusion and equity in business? And I think that one might be harder to get. And when analyzed, we're still looking at such as the gender, the ethnicity pay gap. We need to highlight that this. When the median hourly wage goes in what ethnic groups who are ethnic does, there's a pay gap of 2.3%. We need to also consider how the ethnicity gap is much larger for women and for men, that there are differences between ethnic groups. So all be that's why D&I for corporate.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Alex. You're breaking up on our side. Do you still have your camera on?
I do. Okay.
Yeah,
because it's actually not moving. Like my.
Yeah, maybe take the camera off.
My mouse is not moving now. So this is not going well. Okay.
Yeah, you're breaking up. Are you still there? Okay, we seem to have lost Alex for a bit. Louise, are you still there? Are you hearing me?
Yeah, hi Melissa. Some really great statistics in there that Alex has gone through. Hopefully she'll be able to pick up and rejoin us.
Yeah, no, I agree. If Alex is hearing us, maybe drop out and call back in. So we'll give her a couple of minutes. So no, okay, so she's dropped off there. So yeah, no, it's good. I actually was reading article. I know I sent it out to the OneWISH group about Black women in the UK and in the workplace, and they had there was this group that's done some survey on the information on representation, how they feel around career progression, etc. And I do think that's important to get the data out there, which is the topic of our next panel around some of the data, because I think data informs, you know, what's happening, and it helps make change happen. So I know there's a lot of debate around whether you should have targets and so, but yeah, that's an interesting piece. But for me, I think it's around data. So I think we have to start with having some information. If we don't have it, then we don't know where we're starting from. So,
yeah, we actually, in our last session, which is so there's we had a session in November, and we had another one, you know, we ran a great session last year, and ERM brought some statistics through that just really kind of shocked and horrified me in respect of health and safety and women in leadership positions. And they were basically identified that only 15% of people with significant health and safety roles are women, and they were able to connect that directly to, you know, naturally the way that things are being you know, the focus that we have as health and safety professionals. But it looks like Alex is back now.
Good. And we'll get more into that in the panel discussion later on. So great. Alex, are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. I do apologize. My laptop decided to restart.
Sometimes it happens, but you know, we'll make it through. So good. Yeah, so we'll power through. So I like that. So yes, so you can go back and share, and you can continue because you were sharing some really great insights.
Brilliant. So can you please just let me know that you're seeing this the speaker or the slide?
I'm seeing your speaker notes as well.
Speaker notes as well. Let me just try to change that. There you go.
No, still seeing the main slide and then the next slide with some notes. But I think we can go through with that if you're okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So apologies about that. So we were talking, I'll pick up where I left off. So key considerations for the 2022 business landscape. In terms of key considerations, I think we can actually consider that the Great Resignation or the Big Quit is a big theme that has been talked about for the past few months. Basically, a lot of organizations are losing staff, and a lot of times when there are exit interviews in place, and when we actually give the voice to those employees who are leaving, to actually voice exactly why they're leaving, why they're not happy. It's a lot of times because of inclusive practices, or really the fact that some employees have been overworked during the pandemic and just haven't been considered for development opportunities, or don't see themselves really thriving into the business that they're working in. So something that really needs to be taken into consideration is how all of these factors do play together into actually increasing that sense of belonging and really retaining talent and engaging with your talent, which is really key for retention here. So in terms of the pandemic, even though things seem to be in a much better place nowadays, fingers crossed, at least in some countries and this part of the world, in the Western hemisphere, we have realized that with the pandemic, it has highlighted a lot of inequalities in society. And so there have been not only heightened discrimination towards specific groups, such as apologies. So hate discrimination against Asian populations at the start of the pandemic, but also which has continued actually throughout. But also unemployment, and in particular, how some ethnic groups were affected, were mostly affected by the pandemic as well. So, for example, in the UK, Black and Asian employees were 26 times more likely to be unemployed during the pandemic. We cannot hide away from these statistics, and really it is time to actually look at what organizations and businesses can do to really take responsibility and helping society into moving into the more equitable and inclusive direction. So even as the pandemic has highlighted so many inequities and inequalities, really highlighting people's environments, personal environments, when we had to all work from home or work remotely, but also actually getting to that more personal face of business, let's say. So I believe that concepts such as diversity, but also like equity, inclusion, psychological safety, belonging, have become something that are actually a focus for businesses now, not a nice to have or a box ticking exercise like it used to be for a lot of companies, but an actual business imperative. So those conversations are actually needed, and not only at the senior leadership level, but across all levels. So that is also how businesses come to play a part when it comes to social justice movements. So we talked about, obviously we cannot hide from the conversations that are happening in the world, from the terrible events that have been shaping our world in the past few years, and more recently as well. So examples such as the Black Lives Matter movement iteration following George Floyd's murder, actually highlighting the need for the conversations around race that needed to happen in the workplace, that a lot of corporations were hiding from because they were not ready to have them, or because they wanted to focus on gender. Now that intersectionality actually has been crucial, and we need to consider the facts as they're coming into play as well, the effect that it's having on people and on society as a whole. So not only, of course, BLM was incredibly important, also the anti-Asian hate campaigns following the discrimination against Asian communities and during COVID, but also the Ukraine war, and how actually women are fleeing the war to protect their families, and some of them are actually staying and fighting the war. We're looking at even discrimination when it comes to the women who are fleeing. So Black women are not being permitted into trains to actually flee the country, and all of these conversations, we're realizing, yes, they're happening in business and they affect us at this level, but the impact of them, it's at a wider scope, basically. So how these micro instances of aggressions actually have and resonate at the macro level and actually have an influence on them. So we're starting to also hear a lot of discrimination that is happening against Russians in some places as well. So this is why it's important, basically, to keep D&I at the forefront of business priorities, and not only in waves of conversations, but actually as a business, as a part of the business strategy. And so in terms of the conversation and moving forward, I will ask this question. So a few ideas for actually supercharging inclusion. I think we need to recognize that a lot of organizations have realized that data is key, and really you can't really change you can't change what you can measure, basically. So in terms of data collection, companies have started to actually start a lot more questions, start asking a lot more questions, start rolling out surveys to the organizational level at different levels, etc. Now, this is great. but it needs to be done in a very conscious way, and in a way that is actually transparent in order to build trust. So it needs to show that basically what you're asking employees has a purpose, basically, that there is some cohesion in the ongoing conversations that are happening around DE&I, and not only around DE&I, but how all of the actions play together, actually the development, the recruitment, the attraction, the exit interviews, how everything that actually relates to your employees can actually be inclusive at each step of the way. So by bringing that cohesion and really making sure that you're bringing your employees in the conversation to build that trust, you're actually also telling them that you respect what they're saying, they're telling you, and you need them to tell you where they are, their perceptions, in order to actually put in place interventions and solutions that are going to have a positive impact in the organization. Now, there's a lot of value in those surveys and that quant data, but we do want to highlight as well that qualitative data is just as important. So, and we would recommend for it to be collected by a third party, and not only collected, but analyzed as well. A third party basically gives you gives your employees the impression that at least that data, they're actually sharing it on a more trusted level, so where they can actually they won't have anyone in that room that will be able to report what others have said, etc. So it's an incredibly useful information exercise, apologies, to actually share the information and the insights from employees. So this can be done via focus groups, listening sessions, forums, you name it. But it's really to give your employees the opportunity to share their experiences within your organization, and also their own perception of inclusion, of how inclusive your practices are, and perhaps in which areas you should focus some of your work in the future. So actually reviewing this impact of really the organizational culture on women, on diverse talents at all levels is incredibly important to identify the gaps and create actual psychological safe working environments to support more of these colleagues with speaking up and really contributing, sharing about their experiences, and really contributing to shaping the strategy and the agenda moving forward. It makes also room for processes to be reviewed and updated to reflect the current employee experience. And when we're thinking about things such as succession planning, apologies, it is vital that if it needs to actually support inclusion, which it should, it helps organizations introduce more women and diverse talent into leadership positions. So high-performing women and high-performing diverse talent from those underrepresented groups are usually less likely to be selected for succession, because their leadership styles are less in line with those that currently hold those positions. So really the value of reporting on this data is incredibly important to really show that you're not looking at just the general results, because sometimes what companies will tell us is, well, we're in a great place. 80% of our employees report they're engaged and happy with our organization, and that's great news. But if the majority is homogeneous, then you're missing the point there. You're missing an opportunity to actually go more in depth and look at, okay, out of those 80%, how many are from the majority group? How many are from actually diverse protected characteristics? Are we looking at tenure? Are we looking at different business units or seniority, et cetera, So it's really important that basically that in-depth analysis really gives kind of like a deep dive into the experience shared by everyone in your organization, and not just the majority. So those at this stage, really, again, transparency, communication is incredibly important. So really to share the insights, I'm not saying the whole kind of like data, but at least the insights with your employees, and actually letting them know why you ask those questions, what you're going to do with that data, and the roadmap of interventions. It will create this sense of, okay, we're all kind of like in this together, and we're actually trying to solve issues rather than just trying to shape D&I agendas that are just following trends. So in terms of actual conversations as well. So basically, we've talked about transparency, communication. It's also important that that language is being reflected across the organization. So in terms of the support for the data collection, it also needs to be driven by the senior leadership levels. So basically, that communication needs to come from the top and really drive commitment from the whole business. So if inclusive leaders are the ones that are going to be championing for this data collection, the ones who are going to start role modeling behaviors and having the conversations with their own teams about creating and enhancing inclusive cultures that actually also are kind of like driving psychological safety at the forefront of an employee's well-being, and also their own sense of belonging to their organization. So all of these concepts are things that really leaders should be talking about with their teams. Inclusive leaders, we want to think about them as empathetic. They think about how they can adapt their leadership style to different teams, to different individuals. They're aware of their own biases and perhaps their own awareness and understanding journey as well, but they're interested in actually moving forward in that journey and listening about other people's experiences and their own insights. So really, there's no perfect recipe for inclusive leadership, but being mindful of the diversity makeup of your teams, of the people that you mentor, the people that you sponsor or that you champion when they're not in the room for opportunities. A lot of inclusive leaders choose to use their position of privilege to lift as they climb the corporate ladder for diverse talent. So really being mindful and purposeful in the way that they sponsor talent is incredibly key here to make sure that the leaders of today are helping shape the diverse leaders of tomorrow, and actually getting them to access those senior leadership positions as well, helping them to access those senior leadership positions. So focusing on more diverse working styles during succession planning, as well as we were saying earlier, actually will align with the company's diversity and inclusion goals. So again, coaching, mentoring, development for women and diverse talent, incredibly important. And it gives talent the room to demonstrate their unique leadership style and what they can bring to the conversation to elevate your team's performance. So at Involve, we train leaders on a daily basis from all industries, and it's incredibly interesting to actually hear the conversations that are happening in those trainings, as it turns out that a lot of these individuals have it in them. It's just about trying to get the conversation going, and then actually asking for more accountability to be taken, individual but also collective accountability when it comes to driving change and enhancing inclusion in workplaces. So just I will end just very quickly, kind of like this best practice chat with a conversation around moving away from unconscious bias and into conscious inclusion. So really, it's about framing it in a different, more positive way and more action-based way as well. So theory is great, and learning how to, actually identify your biases is important. But just as important as that is actually learning how to mitigate those biases in the first instance, and also learning from other people's experiences, other people's journeys, and their own biases as well, is incredibly important. That's why we always prone peer-to-peer learning experiences. So trainings are great, but actually learning from one another is so much more powerful. The conversations evolve. We are human and we learn from one another. So the conversations do evolve. The one thing I would like to also highlight is that we've talked about equitable interventions, for example, for diverse talent. We need to shape basically the talent development for each individual. We all have our strengths and our areas of development. However, we shouldn't be putting the onus on diverse talent to develop in order to reach the senior leadership positions. It is also the responsibility of the line managers of today, of the senior leaders of today, to actually create those opportunities and make sure that those opportunities are actually being purposefully presented to diverse talent as well. So we need to basically bring people on the journey with us by leveling up the playing field when it comes to building a common sense of understanding of key concepts such as we mentioned earlier, belonging, psychological safety, inclusion, equity, and what that means for your organization. So having this conversation is an opportunity for your colleagues to learn from their own experiences of breaking their own biases, but also learning from their peers' experiences and stories. So yes, today I just will end with that on that note, basically just saying to break the bias and get inspiration from others about how they're breaking their own biases as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alex, for those insights, some really important points. Some of these we'll be touching during the day, but it's really great reminders. We have run over a bit, so I am going to ask one question, and then, we can always connect. One of the things, LinkedIn's there. I know you're active on LinkedIn, and we can all follow up with you if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah, one of the questions, what's your view or Involve's view around two areas, unconscious bias training and leadership programs that are focused for women?
So on the one hand, unconscious bias training, that's a good question. Unconscious bias training is helpful, but I think we're at a point where we need to go further than that. The time for unconscious bias training is in the past. Now we actually need to move forward and actually take action. So what actions can you take to mitigate biases within yourself, within your teams that you manage, and within the workplace altogether? And and the second part of your question, Melissa.
Leadership training programs focused for women.
For women, absolutely. So they're important as well. Again, to help build confidence. But I think we need to be careful and mindful in the way that we position these programs as well, because we're not saying that women don't have those skills and should develop those skills. What we're saying is women and diverse talent need to gain confidence in those skills and apply them and get the opportunity to apply them so that it is helpful to advance their careers. But then the onus, again, needs to be on line managers that integrate these learnings into the personal development plans, but also on senior leaders to recognize that they need to be more purposeful in the way that they sponsor talent.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. Thanks, Alex. Really, I'm personally admire the work that Involve's been doing, and we're really happy to have had you here today. Hopefully we will be able to get your presentation, and as I said, we'll be staying in touch via LinkedIn and other forums.
Absolutely. Please feel free to connect. And I do apologize for the tech issues, everyone. Yes, have a great day of events. It looks like a really amazing discussion.
No, thank you again, Alex, and happy International Women's Day.
Happy International Women's Day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, keep well.